Shalom Aleichem, everyone. We're continuing Hachsek's learning of the Pele Yoetz. Today is day number 196, and we will conclude the chapter of Jerushim, of how to give the proper drasha. Now, yesterday, the Pele Yoetz informed us that the proper way to darshan in public is to quote the words of other Svarim, the Chachamim, HaGedolim, the previous generations, who said it how it is, and they wrote it with clarity, and they have the Koyach HaTorah behind them. Why should you make up your own nonsense? Why should you come up with your own insights and ideas when you have the Rambam, and you have the Ramchal, and the Maharal, and the Nefesh HaChaim, and you have so many other Svarim that are out there that could explain and could darshan on the profundities of the Torah, and you're relying upon these great Chachamim, Rishonim, Achreinim, Bali Machshava, Bali Musa, and the like, so you have their words that will explain everything. So why rely upon yourself? Who knows what we have to say? As he writes over here, we're like the koif. We are like the monkey next to a human being. We're like nothing compared to what they were in the previous generations. So therefore, he says, better not to say things by heart. Better not to make up your own drashas and your own kinechas and your own insights. Rather, better to say over the words of the Chachamim. However, he writes today, Manasa, what can we do? Kibadoris halol in these generations, and that was back in his time, all the more so in our times. The words of those Chachamim who expound upon the Torah Baal Peh, by heart, with their own words and the like, they are very beloved. Those kind of drashas is what gets the crowds. And when they put up a sign and they announce that the big speaker is coming to town, he's going to give a powerful drasha on the sanctity of Shabbos. He's going to give a big drasha on what it means to be a Yid in today's generation. He'll give a big drasha on Purim, on Simcha, and the like. Everybody comes running. But if he would give a drasha, he'd give a class based on a particular sefer that he's going to be learning, nobody comes. Nobody even pays attention. The kachavet is what we see. You could give classes, you could learn svarim together with people. You get a handful, 3, 4, 5 people will come and they'll learn together with you. You bring in a famous speaker, you bring in a Baal Darshan, someone who's creative in the way that he says things, the stories that he brings, and the examples that he brings, and so on and so forth. They start coming in the droves to be able to hear what he has to say. Well, milsa b'lei time, it makes no sense, says the Pele Yoetz. Let's say that they would announce, the Rambam is coming to the city. And he's going to darshan from the bima. Everybody will come to hear what he has to say. Well, if he should cause it a sefer, but now that you're learning the Rambam from a sefer itself, nobody wants to come and hear what the Rambam has to say. Oh, the Rambam's coming to town, everybody runs. His sefer? Okay, not so interested. Now, if there were people that knew how to learn, and they can say the Torah, it's right over there in the corner. I'll go pick up a sefer when I'm ready to. So I didn't go to the shir, but you know what? When I have a free moment and I know how to learn, I'll pick up the sefer myself in my own house, on my own time, and I'll learn what it has to say. If that would be the state of the Jewish people, that everybody had the ability to go and pick up a sefer by themselves and learn it and understand it in depth, so then I can understand, says the Pele Yoetz, that when someone's giving a shir, you don't want to come to the shir. But you got to know, the most people really don't know how to pick up a sefer and learn it properly. So what's going to be? Then they're going to come and they're going to say, this person, he's a Talmid Chacham, he knows how to say anything, he just opens up a sefer and he reads. I can also read. So it says the Pele Yoetz, it turns out like the opposite things happen. A person who Taki is a Talmid Chacham, and he's giving over a class, he's giving over a shir, and he's learning from inside the Sefer. What do people say? Oh, if he was really a Talmid Chacham, if he really was talking about, he wouldn't have to have a Sefer open in front of him. He'd be able to darshan Baal Peh off the top of his head. He's got something good up his sleeve. He always has exactly the right word to say. But because he's learning out of a Sefer, and we see that he's just reading word for word, verbatim what it says, must be that he's really not as clever and maybe not as big a chacham as that other person who comes down and gives the big drushes that everybody comes to. So what do you do then? It says, because the Pele Yoetz is learning that this is really inappropriate behavior to look down on people that are learning Svarim. So he says, what should you do? And he writes, I'll give you a way to do it, and this is the way it should be done. So if you're going to give a drasha, and it's going to be Baal Peh, which means that you're not going to be looking inside of Svarim every single word that you say. So at least you should use the words and the ideas that are pleasant, pleasing words that are coming from the Svarim that you learned. And a little bit you can say from the simpleton, which is you, the one who's giving the drasha. That means the majority of what you're saying in the drasha should be sourced. It should be coming from a Gemara, from a Midrash. It should be coming from a Sefer. It should be coming from the Rishonim, from the Mefarshim, from Bali Machshava, Bali Musa. That's the majority. Now you have an insight into these words of Chazal that you are quoting. You want to add something? Says the Pele Yoetz, you can add something. And while you're giving the drasha, think to yourself, wow, how lofty Chazal are, how lofty the Maral was, how great and how incredible the wisdom of the Ramchal was, and the Chavetz Chaim, and so on and so forth. And you'll recognize your smallness and your value compared to them, which means it will keep you very humble. Even if you're the best Baal Darshan in the world and you get the whole crowd is crying and they're excited and they're enthusiastic and they're inspired and they're ready to go change themselves and change the world, you might get very haughty about that. However, says the Pele Yoetz, if you think to yourself, because you're busy quoting the words of the great sages before you, it will keep you humble. You're just becoming like a conduit for the words of those Chachamim. Yoimar davar b'shem oimro, you should always say over words in the name of the person who originally said them. If you're quoting the Rambam, say b'shem the Rambam. You're quoting Rabbi Yisrael Salanter in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. You're saying in something in the name of the Pele Yoetz, say it in the name of the Pele Yoetz. Don't say it as your own. Do not dress yourself in a talis, in a cloak that does not belong to you. Meaning, if you say over the words of great Chachamim from previous generations, and you don't say it in the name, people will think that you're saying it in your name, you're saying it on your own, and then you're lying. You're wearing somebody else's clothes to get their credit. Even if he adds a jewel, one little jewel, or a small piece of grain, some small addition over here. Don't even say that in your name. Meaning, if you just add one little knetch over there, you're still quoting the words of Chazal, you're quoting the words of the Bali Musa, you're quoting the words of the Rishonim, so you're just expounding a little bit more. That's okay if you don't have to think, I wanted to say, you don't have to say those words. And I understood in this Chazal, you don't have to say that. Just say over the pshat. If it's an emistic of pshat, it's a real pshat, say it over. But again, the credit's going to go to the one who originally said it. It's terrible for a person who ends up dressing himself in the cloak that doesn't belong to him, which means he tries to take credit for somebody else's wisdom. On the other hand, someone who says over these words of Torah in the name of the person who said them, maybe geula la'olam, he brings geula, he brings salvation to the world. We actually learned this out from Mordechai and Esther, because Esther said over her declaration in the name of Mordechai Yehudi, and therefore what? She was able to be Mevi Geula La'olam. She brought the Geula, she brought the redemption of Klal Yisrael to the world. And therefore, says the Pele Yoetz, we have to be so careful that we should make sure that what we are saying is sourced in reliable sources. I know Rabbi Zatzal used to say over that if you have a problem with something that I said, You're not arguing on me. I'm not saying my own Torah over here. I'm quoting the Rambam, I'm quoting the Ramban, I'm quoting the Nefesh HaChaim, I'm quoting Rashi, I'm quoting the Rishonim, I'm quoting the Mesilas Yesharim. You're not arguing on me. You're arguing on the Rambam. You want to argue on the Rambam? Go ahead. Because you can't really argue on the Rambam the way that you would like to argue on me. And therefore a person has a lot to glean from them. And says the Pele Yoetz, so you want to darshan about Peh without all the pile of Sarim in front of you quoting every single word verbatim? That's fine. But make sure that your sources are coming from there. And then you're expounding and explaining and you're bringing it down to the generation that you are speaking so they can understand practically what the great Risha and what the great Baal Musa, what the great Baal Machshava was saying. And you say it over B'Shem Omer in their name, and you give them the credit, and that itself will be Meivi Geula La'olam, will be Zeicha then with our great humility, and we don't take the credit for ourselves. That will bring the Geula, that will bring the redemption to this world, Be'ezus Hashem. All the best.